Hi guys, welcome to Wacro Audio, and today this is part 2 of the video that I did the other week where you can use a simple cable with solo left and right out of your into your audio interface and a stereo out from the earphone jack of your amp if it has one. Now I have an EVH 5150 and that has an earphone plug. Now, there is another way you can do this that I thought of when I was doing the other video, and it's a little bit different though because it'll basically be running the sound from pretty much from your preamp into your audio interface, which might work okay, but again, always make sure you have your amp plugged into your speaker box, but you'll probably have the sound come out. The difference will be if you're sending it from the send through your effects, out of the effects into the return, or just the send from your preamp to the audio interface, it's going to have a different sound because it's coming from the preamp and stuff. It hasn't gone back to the amp and gone out from that further signal. So you're going to have some different kind of sounds and effects and things, but it'll still work. And what you'll probably find when you're not using the earphone jack method, you'll still be having sound come through. So if you're going to do that, you're actually better off just using your mics, because using mics is always the best. You're always going to get the best sound rather than a DI signal. DI signals are good for bass, maybe one or two other instruments things, but when you're really recording acoustic sound, it's always best to use a good mic. There's plenty on the market. You can try different ideas and things for your sound when you're working with your guitars and things. So, but this method specifically that I'm doing, that I'm showing you, is what I did in part 1 video that I put on last week, and I'm going to show you what I did. I'm going to switch over now to my display. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, you can see that I have I recorded the left track and then I recorded the right track, and I have them both playing through both channels. Okay, and I'll just bring these back to center for a minute. Right, so I'm going to play both of them at the same time, and then I'm going to start to pan them, and you'll just see how just doing a basic pan and thing can make things sound a lot more interesting. Okay, so you can see how the sound was sort of moving left to right. These are very raw. This is straight from the amp into the interface. There's no compression, EQ, anything like that. Okay, so I'm going to do some EQing, but I'm also going to show you a little trick, and this can help you with some phase issues. If you do, you'll notice that there's slight out of time here. Now, even if I cut this and move this up a little bit, it could still cause some problems throughout the track. So I'm going to just have a look through here, and you can see that even as we go through at the beginning of each sort of circle, there's quite a bit of difference between them. That's why it sounds like, you know, when you're chugging along, it still sounds a little bit out of whack. So one thing you can do is you can go to the front here. I'm going to cut these back a little bit. You can move this up just a fraction. Move that up just a fraction more. Let's bring the line down right at the front. We're using our top track here, our track 1, as our main sort of indicator and guide rail. Okay, now that's probably still going to be a fraction out, as you can see there. But let's have another listen, and we'll see if this has just improved things just a little bit. Okay, so not too bad, still kind of sounds the same here. So here's a little trick that you can do. Let's do this in Pro Tools, and you can probably do this in most others, is that we're going to move one of these along just a very small fractions. You can see in here, you'll be able to see, I think actually probably over this way, you'll actually see that I'm going to move these ones to the left. Actually, I'll move this to the right. Let's move the top one to the right very slightly. Okay, and I'm just going to do that. What you can actually do, you can move this up to about, make them up to about 10 milliseconds apart. Okay, and you'll actually expand and give it a bigger stereo sound. This is just a little trick that can make things sound a bit fatter and a bit wider. At the moment, what I'm probably trying to do is bring it a little bit closer, even though I'm moving things apart. Bring it a little bit closer so we can get some of those chugs a bit more on time, but because I'm probably just slightly out of time there, we can actually use a little bit of reverb and things later on in the mix to bring that a little bit tighter and closer. But this is just an example for now, so it is a little bit rough, but it's mainly about ideas and things. Okay, so I'm going to play this again and we'll see if it's got a little bit closer. Okay, so that's a little bit tighter. You can still hear in a couple of places. It's a bit rough, slightly out. There's a bit of that kind of effect. And if I was recording this for real and making a song, I would actually re-record the bottom track and just make sure that they're a lot tighter, because you really want to get these guitars and your chugs and things tight. So it gives it a fatter sound. Then when you're throwing drums and your bass over the top of it, it's going to give it a much cooler sound. But for now, this is just what we're doing at the moment. So the next stage to move along is that I want to put a bit of EQ on this guitar. Now, because both settings are pretty much the same, I'll be able to use this EQ and just slide it across for this one, but it's better to do EQs on both. You can actually do different EQs on either side. Okay, and I'm just going to bring these to the center. I always mix in the center and then spread them out, and you can really hear a better effect. Now we're just going to do this top track here. All right, I'm just going to play around with this EQ and make it a little bit cleaner, a little bit tighter. So that was a very simple bit of EQ there. I'm going to do the other side now. Let's have a listen to the other side. And I don't have to specifically make these sound exactly the same. I just want to get rid of the bad noises that are sort of inherent in some of these frequencies and just eliminate them by about 3 dB or so. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again. So you probably noticed there that I was actually working in some different frequencies and things, and it's basically because it's just what I'm hearing in each sort of guitar, even though they are very, very similar. They've both been recorded differently. But let's have a bit of a listen now, and we're going to spread these out and see how they sound together. So I'm going to start back at the beginning here. So you can hear, especially at the end here, it is actually quite in sync. It's just my sort of rhythm chugging here on each guitar is probably a little bit out, but like I said, this is a demo. Here's the next step. Okay, this is something I normally do. So what we've done, we've got the raw guitar here, as you can see. All right, I'm actually going to now put in a new, I want a stereo audio track. Yes, that's right. This is my audio track, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually send each of these into, now these should be going. Okay, so what I've done here, I have outboard gear that you can't actually see. One's an EQ and one is a compressor, okay, and I've just sort of chained them together and they come back. So I'm sending these two out of my audio interface into a chain that has my EQ and my compressor, and then it comes back to my audio interface in plugs 3 and 4. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. So it's kind of like your return on your amp. You send it out from your preamp through your effects chain and back into your amp. This is the same thing with an audio interface and some of my outboard gear. Okay, now I just have my compressor set pretty low, but what you're going to see, you should see a bit of a difference here when I start to record, and I'm just making sure everything's okay. So when I record this, you should see that the audio waves are going to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit tighter. Okay, so you can see now, let's turn this off, what I've done is send each of these tracks out into my EQ, outboard EQ, and my outboard, my outboard EQ is just a 32 band EQ, which is normally used for live stuff, but I just like using these. And I've got a DBX compressor as well, so it's chained into the compressor and then comes back to the audio interface and records into Pro Tools. Okay, so it's a loop. All right. And you can see that the compressor has really sort of squashed this down, changed it around, all this sort of thing, all the good stuff that we love. Now, what I'm going to do, we actually don't need these anymore, but I am going to keep them. Okay, just in case I ever need to redo anything, rechange everything, I'm just going to keep it. But I'm going to just take these inputs out, and I'm going to put no inputs on these as well, okay, because we don't need to use these at the moment. I can actually duplicate, I might actually open this up, bus to 1718. Where is it? 1718, there we are. And I'm going to turn these off as well. And I want to do one to 1920. We're using buses now. Alright. Pre. And we want to set these up. Pre. Alright. So what I've done, actually I'll just turn these off. I'm just going to do hide and make inactive. And now we have a cleaner, tighter guitar track. I have the same outputs. We don't need this input anymore. It doesn't really matter. It's still going to work. We want our output of this going to our output here, which is fine. I'm just going to slip over here. Okay. Actually, I'm going to change this over to my bus, which is 2122. So, okay, now we have our bus going to here. This is my main sub track for the guitar. So all the sound in all these tracks has to go through this one before it goes here, okay? This is very basic chaining stuff for you. It might sound a bit complicated if you're not used to it, but trust me, it is quite easy, okay? So what we have now is those two guitar tracks on one single stereo track. That's the stereo track now, because two mono tracks put together becomes a stereo track. I have outputs going to delay, and I have outputs going to the reverb. And my main track, the main audio from this track is going to this one here, the sub. Okay, so what I can do now is I got a cleaner sort of guitar track, and we'll have a listen to that. And I'll put on a bit of reverb. I won't use delay just yet, but I'll put on some reverb, and you can start to hear how it's going to fatten up, all right? So why don't we, I'll give you a listen to the track, and then I'll start to put reverb over it. Now, because it's already been EQ'd, we're going to do some EQ in this as well, but we'll do that a little bit later, because we want to make it a bit tighter. Okay, so the reverb sort of come on there. I played a little bit with delay, but you saw how it got a little bit too messy and things, so I wasn't too happy with that. There's a couple of different ways we can do this again. I like to use this kind of reverb, but the reverb is still a little bit too much, so I'm going to turn that down a little bit. But in the meantime, I'm just going to bring up my dynamics here. I like using this virtual mix. This one here that you're about to see come up is by Slate. Hopefully it comes there. It can be a little bit slow to load. Here we are. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the compressor because I've already compressed it quite a bit. The revival, I don't need that much. EQ, look, it's up to you which one you kind of want to use here. The preamp, this is a console preamp, so I'm going to crank it up to the American sort of one. I'm going to drive it a little bit more, and it's going to pull the output down a little bit so it balances out. And I'll start playing with some EQ. I just could decide which one. I think I might just use, for now, I'm just going to use a little bit of Neve EQ and leave it just at that for the moment. But as you can see, we've got heaps down the side here. This is a really good one for kick drums and things like that. We do have another compressor here. Sometimes I put this on just to boost the signal a little bit in the mix, but that just depends. The red's pretty good, it's a lot milder, and you can go from there, okay? So I'm just going to start this again and see how we go. So there you go, that's kind of a very basic kind of mix that you can do for your guitars. Once you get other instruments put in, you can really start to hear the difference because, like I said before, because mine are a little bit slightly out of time there because I just threw this together. But have a listen to the difference now between these, and I'll put a output on here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'll just make sure this one here is deactivated for the moment. Okay, so we don't want that sound coming through. And we're just going to go back and have a listen now, compare the two. I've turned off the reverb and the mixing at the end here, just so we can hear these nice and raw. So as you can see, guys, you can just keep playing around with the sounds and getting different sort of effects and things like that from just recording in a raw sound into your guitar, into your amp, into your audio interface. Yeah, if you have outboard gear, you can leave it. If you don't have outboard gear, it doesn't matter. You can do the same thing that I did. Let's take that on. When you have your other channels here, just show you, I need to make these active again. When you have these two original channels, you can do the same thing here, set up your audio stereo channel, and you can just put on, if you have a compressor of some sort, dynamics usually, let's put a grain on here. Yeah, you can actually just put your own plug-in, okay, you don't have to have outboard gear, you just put your own plug-in, and set up your compressor the way you want it, and run these two raw tracks once they've been cleaned up a bit, run them through your compressor, record it, and you got the same thing. You know what I mean? I don't need this here because it's already been done, but you can see how just working in the box, and you got to know what you're doing a little bit, but it's not that hard. Okay, I'm an engineer. I went to JMC Audio. Probably doesn't sound always the best because I'm still trying to get it right with working with OBS Studio and all those sorts of things, but I'm trying to get it as close as I can to what I want you to hear what I'm hearing through my speakers and things. But look, this is a DI sound more than anything. You can work with it and chunk it up. Once you get your drums in, once you get other guitars in, once you get your bass in, bit of lead, it's going to sound really good. Okay, so basically, this has been a bit of a rundown on how you can do these sorts of things, just little techniques and that sort of thing. I hope this has been really helpful for you. And let me just flip back over. There we go. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And basically, just some little tricks and things. You can do very similar things with drums. You can do it with bass. You can do it with vocals. What I've done here, get down your raw tracks, record them in, whether you use a microphone, DIing, whatever you want to do. And you just start to play. It's just a process of trying to eliminate as much noise as you can. Like on my guitar down here, before I even go into my amp, I've got two different noise suppressors. One's just kind of built into a compressor. The other one is just a Boss noise suppressor. It's the first thing in my chain. And I just work it through, then I have a return. So it's a bit of a complicated setup I won't get into. But it's just about constantly trying to refine that sound. And when I'm talking about clean sound, I'm not talking about distortion or non-distortion. I'm talking about getting out all the noise. When I talk about clean sound, I want a lot of the noise taken out. And you can hear that once we started compressing and EQing a bit, a lot of that started to disappear a lot more. And when you got other instruments in the mix, it will just blend in a lot more, and a lot of that background noise and all that sort of thing is gone, and you've got a much nicer cleaning sounding guitar. Now that was basically just me stuffing around for about 15-20 minutes and recording the guitar straight in, but again, I kind of know what I'm doing because I spent 3 years going to college learning how to do this stuff. And but again, not too hard, even if you're not quite sure what you're doing. Depends on your audio interface. Work with one that you're used to, but the principles are always pretty much the same, okay? With setting up your sends, setting up your channels, knowing where you're sending things. Routing can get a bit confusing sometimes, but you just want to make sure you get used to knowing where the sound is going and where it's coming back to, okay? And creating loops and things. So at the end of the day, I hope that's helped. This has been part 2. You don't always need to go out and buy $3,000 worth of compressors and $3,000 worth of foot sounds and all these other types of gadgets and gadgets. Trust me, I've been through so many of them over the years. I find what works and what doesn't work and finding new things. And so having those basic IR responses, and they've got some really good ones out there. Always best to start minimum, add it to your sound, your raw sound that you've cleaned up. Add anything extra, always add at a small level and just start to bring it up a little bit to taste, okay? You don't want to smash everything and push everything down. It ends up sounding like crap. You just want things to be really nice and sit in the mix really nicely, okay? So I might do a video on, I'm doing some new songs, I'm doing some new tracks, mainly just guitar and a bit of sort of fusion jazz at the moment. I might do something on that pretty soon. And for now, I'm just going to leave it at that. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Please like, please subscribe, and share it around so other people can learn too, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.